Hello everyone, I'm Lawrence from Extropy. Welcome to Module 7 of our Cairo Auditing course. In this module I'm going to talk about testing. We're going to start off with the expectations that we should have as auditors. Then I will talk about unit testing. We'll move on then to look at fuzz testing and finally fork testing. When you receive a project that you're going to audit, you really should have the expectation that there will be sufficient unit tests. These will be giving high coverage of the project. If not, then that is certainly something that you can mention in the report. Generally speaking, you shouldn't expect to have to write your own tests. There's all the standard unit tests. It may be that you would like to write a test if you find some edge case or some niche condition that you want to explore, or perhaps if you want to demonstrate a vulnerability, it would be appropriate to write a test to show that. But typically you would expect the client to have thoroughly tested the project. Also, the client should provide details of any dependencies or instructions that are needed in order to run the tests. It sadly is quite common that when you receive a project and you look to run the tests, that you can't get them to run for some reason, that you haven't got the correct dependencies, etc. I would also say that running unit tests can be quite a useful process. It does help you understand what the project is trying to do. So when you start looking at some code base, that could be a good place to start to give you an overall idea of how the project hangs together. So Foundry can be used to do testing. Of course, you can also do this with SCAR, but Foundry generally offers more sophisticated testing. If you want to use it, there's some details there of the configuration changes you will need to make. And here we've got an example contract and then an example test of that contract. So the contract itself is very simple. We have a simple balance in storage and then a couple of functions. One is a view function, which is to get the balance, and then we have one to increase the balance. So if you're going to test this, then this would be an example test that you would have. So you first of all can declare and deploy your contract, and then you would go through and test the preconditions, run one of the functions, and then test the post condition. Of course, this is really just the first step, and what you would hope is that in addition to this type of test, what you would see from the developers would be tests that show that error conditions would be emitted appropriately, would explore any kind of edge cases. So you don't, if the unit test just test for the happy path, just test that the functionality is working as expected, then that's, in my mind, not really complete. What the developer should be doing is writing tests to try to break their code, but also once their code is robust, then they should be writing tests to show that it can't be broken by any number of malicious inputs. So I would like to see those types of tests provided as well. Now, fuzz testing can be quite a valuable technique. The reason I like the idea is that, as we've mentioned, one way to think about auditing is to think that you're trying to find the ideas or the approach that the developer may have missed. We will be assuming that the developer has made some mistakes, and therefore we're trying to find out what those mistakes are. And if the if the developer has created some unit tests, it could well be the case that if the developer hasn't fully understood what the project should be doing, then the unit test will also have followed that as well, and they will also be incomplete. Therefore, fuzz testing can be quite useful because it introduces random values into the test. So these then do not depend upon any assumptions that the developer has made, and it can then be useful to throw up some edge cases. Of course, it's limited in what it can do. We can't, because of just because of time, we can't really provide every possible value into a function. If you want that type of thing, then you're looking more at symbolic execution and formal verification. But it still can be useful. By providing random values, it may then throw up some unforeseen circumstance. With Foundry, the way that we create a fuzz test is to add an argument to the normal test function, as you can see here. And then you run the test in the normal way, and it will provide random values for those extra arguments. Only certain types are supported at the moment, as you see there. So it is limited also in that sense. It may not be applicable to every test that you have. You can do some configuration, so there's some details here. You can choose how many runs you want the fuzzer to make, and also the seed for the random number generator. This would mean that you could reproduce a particular fuzz test by using the same seed. Of course, the number of runs, if you increase that, that's going to be potentially more useful, but then you've got to think about how much time that is going to take. In addition to Foundry, there's also a project called Cairo Fuzzer. I've got a link there to the repo. This is a standalone tool that will also allow you to do fuzz testing of your contracts. And finally, I want to mention fork testing. The general idea of being able to test against a fork of a network is very valuable, and it does mean that your test can be quite rich. There are a couple of ways of configuring the fork, as listed here, either via the command line or as an attribute in your configuration file. So we've got some examples there taken from the documentation, so you can see how to put those details into the file. As you see, once you've got those in your TOML file, then in your tests you can use the attribute along with the name of the fork, so that you can test it against different forks. So this may well be very useful, particularly if you want to check perhaps that it is the project is certainly working against a more richer environment, or maybe you want to check that it works the same way in two different environments. So it can be a very useful technique. Okay, so that's the end of this module. Quite straightforward, the idea of testing, and so I look forward to talking to you in module 8. Thanks everyone.